Looking for royalty-free music? Discover Epidemic Sound. Get the safest music subscription for content creators.
Gonna get this going tonight, guys. Not waiting for anybody. I apologize for the problems. And I am back to unable to set up a stream, I guess. My streaming software is not connecting to YouTube now. So my setup stream was a fake stream. And last night I couldn't stream. So that is where we are at. So I am streaming from a unique stream today. This one's going to work, it looks like, but I can't set up a pre-screen, set it up earlier in the day, and I can't seem to, get them connect the software and YouTube since I did the Joe Rogan clip. Oops, probably shouldn't even said his name. But since then, I've not been able to stream properly. And I got a lot of good stuff for you today. So I'm going to start. Nobody's joined yet, but because if you're joining late, if you're seeing this, if anybody's seeing this live late or whatever, please share it. If you're a subscriber, please hit the notification because I guarantee my closest friends who are subscribed still aren't seeing it, so you won't see it either. So hit the notification because I talk about out of the mainstream media subjects. I will be massively hit, and I already was trying to talk about Yosef R, and I got hit. So I've had a hard time streaming. Let's try tonight. I got a nice lineup all prepared because I was trying to stream last night and I was trying to stream this morning and I just can't seem to stream. So let's do this. Share it out, like it. And I'm going to start out tonight with a little bit more of a lighter-hearted feeling. And maybe we can wait a little bit before we get into the interview. See if some people join us. Give you guys time to share this out. But I have, to start out, I wanted to do, Government Secrets does a week in review, and then they do their two actual segments. So we are going to start out with their week in review while we light one up, blaze one, drink one, do whatever you got to do to get in the right state to laugh at politics, not get mad at politics. Let's get high and get laughing at some politics.
They're at rockfin.com/Graham Elwood. Hello, truth to tweet. There it is. Share this out on your social media. Hit the like button. Do all that fun stuff. And I think that's it. Let's bring on Lee Camp, host of Redacted Tonight, creator of Rad Indie Media. Lee Camp.
Hello, Graham.
What's up, dude?
I was under the impression that we had an agreement that we would wait until the middle of the show to ramp up towards the expression evil cunts.
What was that?
You used evil cunts in the intro, and I thought that was more of a mid-show kind of expression.
Yeah, I wanted to just start us off hot. You know what I mean? I wanted to come
coming in hot.
I wanted to come up swinging. The side light here that fills in this, it was giving me with battery, and it was being a pain in the ass. So I'm already not.
You're saying the side light is an evil cunt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And as are YouTube. I think they're in the same vein of evil cunts.
Have no fear. You will always be better lit than me, sitting under my, sad office lighting.
I just always figure you always had like a candelabra or something that you hung over your head.
That'd be so much better if it was just lightly flickering, like Phantom of the Opera or something.
Just some goth, and there's just playing in the background that only you can hear. That's how I envision your home.
Literally just a candle slowly melting onto a skull that's just sitting on the desk. No explanation of whose skull.
No. And you always say something as you pass it that no one can quite hear. That's some sort of you don't know what.
It's in a tongue.
Yeah, in their tongue, some sort of incantation or whatever as you walk by. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. You'll just walk by and be like, and then, hey, Graham, you want something to drink? Sure.
It's the same thing the guy chanted when he ripped the heart out in Indiana Jones Temple of Doom.
Well, you guys went basically the same college, right? You studied the same course.
Yeah. It was a community college in Central Virginia. We were both there.
So you guys just took like basic intro classes and then like incantations and demonic
weirdly, that guy was strange even in college. All right, he would say that same incantation when he would scoop the tater tots, and everyone was like, "Dude, that's just too much."
You always have that. He'd just be like cutting open an apple with that weird hook knife, like like, what? Can't he just eat the apple regular style? What's this kid's problem?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that skull, knowing your family lineage, like goes back to like Ichabod Crane or whatever. You know what I mean? Like since you have all it's like
Dude,
George.
You called it. I have a family lineage. This week in government secrets.
Oh,
unfortunately,
family.
Of the Lee Camp family. Unfortunately, it's not a secret, but it is. It is this week in history.
Oh, well, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this episode going quick. We're going to have this Government Secrets episode 71, where Lee Camp reveals more weird shit about his family.
One day I'll actually have to do so. Well, I should first say that I decided to be lazy this week, although in kind of a cool way. And I'm going to do, depending on how much time we have, 2 or 3 stories on this week in government secrets.
Oh, all right.
This one is not really, and you know, well, they're short, so we'll have plenty of time. But this one's not really a story. It's just, I just wanted to let you know, and I knew you'd enjoy it, that this week in government secrets, this week in history, in 1801, Supreme Court Justice John Marshall was sworn in. My ancestor, and we're actually, my family is closest related. The 2 people we're closest to are John Marshall, which we're actually like, you can get the Marshall family tree where it's got, 100 names that are, you can see it all branching out. And we're on that, like my father's family is on that tree. So it's like direct descendants. My older brother's name is Marshall. My father's middle name is Marshall. And so, yeah, we're directly related from him and from Walter Camp, the guy that played American football. The ones that are looser connections, but still descended from are, George Washington, Robert E. Lee, those fellas.
Wow. It's like every time we go into this, there's like more bewilderment that I'm faced with of just like, I think in 1801, my great grandparents were, I don't know, probably trying to escape the potato famine in Ireland or something like that.
So you can actually find on a family tree, you can trace it all the way back to a potato. It's right coming right out of the potato. Just I am a descendant of a potato. That makes total sense. Absolutely. That's why the small pocket goes back to my original potato heritage. They would always have little pockets on the sides of their potatoes. For fingerling potatoes. Yes, exactly.
So now, in my understanding, you have more, because we're going to do a this week in government secrets rock block, right? That's what we got going on.
Yes, I figured I'll do one of those, and then we'll do yours, and then I think we should have time to come back and do one more this week in government secrets.
Okay, so one more, or me do mine. Me do horrible sentence, awful sentence.
Me do mine.
Judging by the way this English is going so far in this episode, it's going to be a fun one. This is going to be a wild and woolly one.
Me do mine? Me mine?
Me do mine.
Mine.
That was, this week I'm hosting with Yoda.
A government secret segment you will read.
Government secrets in this week.
CIA operation again.
Yeah, no, I'll do one, and then we'll get to your story.
Okay, so Lee do Lee, and then me do mine.
Lee do Lee, then me do mine, which was the initial name of the podcast. We changed it early. If you go back and listen to episode 1 and 2, it was called Lee do Lee and me do mine.
But they were all put together. It was just 2 words. Lee do Lee and me do mine were just each 2 words.
Yeah. So this is February 4th, 1899. So today, 1899, was the end of the Philippine-American War. An armed conflict between the First Philippine Republic and the United States that lasted from February 1899 to July 2nd, 1902. Oh, sorry. So the beginning of the Philippine.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. And I know this will shock you, but the Filipino nationalists viewed the conflict. They viewed the conflict as the Philippine Revolution. Many of them called it, or as a continuation of the Philippine Revolution against Spain. The U.S., though, regarded it as an insurrection. You know, when we go to a place, decide we own them, and then they fight back. That is an insurrection. That is not us trying to enslave people and killing those who fight back.
Well, again, it sounds like the Philippines have the same audacity as like the Iraqis have of putting a country over American oil. Like the Philippines, Filipinos just had the audacity of putting their country on an island chain that was America.
Yeah,
So.
and various resources there, you know, whatever.
Sure.
Fruits and veggies, whatever things we felt like getting.
Military strategic point geographically. Yeah, that's what they shouldn't have set up their own free country in the way of our empire. So that's
And
great.
so the Philippines was given to the U.S. in the Treaty of Paris, under which the United States and it was the end of the Spanish-American War.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the Spanish-American War, the former captors of the Philippines handed them to the new captors of the Philippines, and we were like, why are they being surly? Why are they... Spain, can you please talk to them and tell them they're ours now? Because they don't seem to get the Treaty of Paris. Like, they don't seem to understand what happened there.
I know, the audacity of people wanting their own freedom the way America has. Isn't this one of those Smedley wars that Smedley Butler participated in when he gave that speech of like, I helped the banana boys down in Panama? And is that like...
Yeah, I can't remember. It very well may have been I can't remember whether he said Philippines or not. But he wrote a whole book about war as a racket. And I haven't read the book, but everyone should definitely check out his speeches.
Oh, the speeches, I've played them on the show numerous times. It's just like, I helped Standard Oil, the Standard Oil fellas, take away. And like, it's so great. It just sounds like William S. Burroughs reading one of his poems, only talking about American empire.
So did he give the whole speech with a cigar in his mouth? Read by Smedley Butler with a cigar in his mouth. Read by me. Go ahead.
I don't know. I was going to call back Lee do Lee, me do me.
Oh.
Me do mine.
Read by me, motherfuckers, with a cigar in my mouth.
With a fixed bayonet at your throat, I'm reading you a bedtime story. Now I don't know. I don't know who I'm turning into some sort of.
I'd love to hear that audiobook, and it's just him. But I picture him not just being. You know, considering he's like the most awarded Marine ever, I picture him just not being repentant at all. Just like, I made the fucking Africa safe for Standard Oil, and I'd do it again tomorrow.
Yeah, just.
I made it safe for the banana boys down in Peru.
I stamped out a lot of freedom, and I love it. My boots are shiny with the tears of quelled insurrections.
Of course, we're kidding. Smedley Butler
It's great.
Did not celebrate what he had done, and is one of the few in our higher ups in our military to have like devoted himself after he got out to revealing the truth about American empire. But so let's see.
Yeah. Government secrets, guys. I like checking in with them on a regular basis. Government Secrets is an amazing podcast, and I will from time and again show a small clip here and there because they are, yeah, it's a good show. Lee Camp does great work. Graham can be quite funny, and he's got a good show too. Graham Elwood, the yeah, not gonna think of it right now, guys. What's your anyway? Let's do. I want to do Tom Hartman's student loan segment before we get into the interview.
Became governor of California in the 70s. He knew that an educated populace was more progressive and more likely to vote Democratic. And he was determined to stop the explosion of California educated Americans caused by the 1944 GI Bill and free tuition at the University of California, where he was the governor. 40 years later now, we are just kneecapped. We've got 44 million Americans crippled with student debt. This is a $1.5 trillion drag on our economy. And that doesn't begin to describe the damage that's been done to this country. After he destroyed low-income Californians' ability to get an education in the 1970s, his first year as governor of California, he ended free tuition at the University of California system and cut their state aid to the college system by 20% right across the board, just in his first year. You know, and when he was asked why, he said, and I quote, "College students are too liberal," and quote, "America should not subsidize intellectual curiosity." Like, education is just, we just do it for fun, right? I mean, fully 60% of the college-educated vote in 2020 went to Joe Biden. Republicans have a reason to hate college. Colleges produce, you know, thoughtful people. They produce people who are capable of thinking for themselves, who are capable of researching things, who are, you know, who are capable of critical thinking. This is why Limbaugh.
See that bright brain full of activity? That's a healthy 18-year-old.
I used to call college graduates and professors the pointy-headed liberals of academia. Right.
So the fun thing with the serpent is, how does a serpent talk?
That's hilarious. Get through with one, goes right to the next.
You know, on May 1st, 1970, Ronald Reagan came out and said that the American students protesting the war in Vietnam were, quote, brats, freaks, and cowardly fascists, and said, quote, "If it takes a bloodbath, let's get it over with. No more appeasement." 4 days later was the Kent State Massacre, and 4 students were dead. Before Reagan became president, the states paid 65% of the cost of college. The federal government paid about 15%. So in other words, government paid 80% of the cost of education. Students paid 20%. That was tuition. Oh. Today, it's exactly reversed. The states pay about 20%, and the federal government and students pay about 80%, as, you know, just ask any.
And in that same time frame, the way our taxes work, the federal, corporations used to pay about 66% of the federal taxes, and now civilians pay 66% of the federal taxes. So that has been reversed as well.
Any student, right? Devin Fergus documented this for the Washington Post. He said in Reagan's, you know, when Reagan became president, quote, "No, this is the Washington Post, no federal program suffered deeper cuts than student aid. Spending on higher education was slashed by some 25% between 1980 and 1985. Students eligible for grant assistance freshman year had to take out student loans to cover their second year." And this became the mantra, the conservatives' mantras, you know, let kids pay for their own damn liberal educations. David Stockman in 1981 told a reporter, "I don't accept the notion that the federal government has an obligation to fund generous grants to anybody who wants to go to college. I'd suggest that we could probably cut more." And then his first education secretary, Terrell Bell, wrote in his memoir, Stockton and all the true believers identified all that drag and drain on the economy with the tax eaters, people on welfare, unemployment insurance, students. Right. Oh, and then he added, the elderly bleeding the public purse with Medicare, the poor exploiting Medicaid. And then 360, Sean. And then, of course, we got William Bennett, his next education secretary, who had this to say.
But I do know that it's true that if you wanted to reduce crime, you could, if that were your sole purpose, you could abort every black baby in this country and your crime rate would go down. That would be an impossible, ridiculous, and morally reprehensible thing to do. But your crime rate would go down.
Right. What? So this was the Reagan position, right? It's like, you know.
What? Yeah, economics has more of a play on crime than anything on the planet. Economics is always the key factor, you asshole moron.
So if they're not, if people can't afford to go to college, screw them. And if they're going to become criminals, you know, it was just insane. My dad and my wife's dad both went to college on the GI Bill. My dad didn't graduate. Louise's dad not only graduated, but became the Assistant Attorney General for the state of Michigan. They were 2 out of almost 8 million young men and women who not only got free tuition from the 1944 GI Bill, but also got a monthly stipend to pay for room, board, and books. And the return on this investment was breathtaking. Edward Humes wrote a book called Over Here, How the GI Bill Transformed the American Dream. He's like the authority on this subject. And this is an excerpt from that, or a summary of that. That groundbreaking legislation gave our nation, now keep in mind, this paid for with tax dollars. Nobody paid a penny to go to college on this. That groundbreaking legislation gave our nation 14 Nobel Prize winners, 3 Supreme Court justices, 3 presidents, 12 senators, 24 Pulitzer Prize winners, 238,000 teachers, 91,000 scientists, 67,000 doctors, 450,000 engineers, 240,000 accountants, 17,000 journalists, 22,000 dentists, and millions of lawyers, nurses, actors, artists, writers, pilots, and entrepreneurs. And not only that, when people have a college education, they not only contribute to society, but, you know, in shall we say, more vigorous ways, increasing the competence and vitality of a nation, but they also make more money, which stimulates the economy. And because they earn more, they pay more in taxes, which helps pay back the government for the cost of their education. If you look at the GI Bill in $1952, just to standardize it, the GI Bill's education benefit cost America $7 billion. Over the next 40 years, and they've done the math on this, over the next 40 years, that $7 billion investment created an increase in economic output of $35.6 billion, you know, like we invented the transistor, stuff like that, right? The extra taxes received from those higher wage earners produced $12.8 billion. In other words, for every dollar we invested, we got $7 back as a nation. Not to mention transistors and microprocessors and the internet and sending men to the moon and Velcro and Tang. And it's like we led the world in innovation, R&D, and new business generation for 3 generations. And it's not like this is a secret from American presidents, right? Jefferson and Lincoln both knew about this. Jefferson started the University of Virginia as a free college. He was so proud of that. It's on his tombstone rather than the fact that he was president. He wrote his own tombstone, his own epitaph. And Lincoln passed the Morrill Act in 1862, which gave 90,000 acres to each state in the Union, 90,000 acres of federal land, and said, sell this land and put that money in a trust to pay for free tuition to this college in perpetuity. Out of that came 76 either free or very low tuition colleges, state colleges across the United States. My mom went to one, Michigan State University, so did I, very briefly. But and this is, and not only that, you know, the GI Bill didn't just pay for that. They also paid for, room and board and books. And this is normal around the world, by the way. What we did with the GI Bill is now being done routinely all over the world. There's over 300,000 American students right now studying for free in Germany, Denmark, Norway, Finland, Sweden, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic, among others. So, I mean, we look at this damage that these Republican policies have done, both economic and human, and it's devastating. You've got, two generations of young people who have not been able to start new businesses, who have and become entrepreneurs, who have not been able to buy houses, who have not been able to start a family and have kids because they're so deeply in debt with student loans. This is kneecapping America at a time when we need to be soaring. We need innovation. There's all this talk now about Joe Biden doing an executive order to slightly reduce people's student debt. We need Congress to act. We need to fully zero out all student debt in the United States. And we need to go back to funding colleges 80-20 instead of 20-80 like we had before Reagan. We need to reverse Reaganism in this regard and make college in the United States once again something that you can attend. You can put yourself through college like I did. I mean, I didn't complete college, but when I went, I paid for it by working as a dishwasher at Bob's Big Boy and changing tires at the Exxon station on Trowbridge Road in East Lansing. My mom, went through college at Michigan State University in the 1940s, paid her way by being a summer lifeguard up in Charlevoix, Michigan, up north in Michigan.
Up north in Michigan, that's where I go, guys. That is exactly where I go. Same place as him. His family is actually from that area, so he is, yeah, that's why I always give him a shot, maybe. But either way, it was a good segment. It was worth checking out, and no takebacks. But let us move on. I wanted to do the interview. We're going to do it, even if this stream is hidden at the moment. I don't care. Let's do this. I had 3 interviews I want to get to, and let's just get through this one first, and then we'll see how the rest of them come. I got a lot of other segments I want to do too, so I'm going to do 1 interview, and then we'll do our North Carolina, South Carolina ballot update for medical marijuana. But first the interview, then medical marijuana.
Is a doctor. She is a prominent member of the Green Party, and she is a presidential candidate for the Green Party. Please welcome. Oh, and you know what? I do not like to forget this about her biography because this is very important, especially for Get Your News On with Ron purposes. She is a musician. So please welcome back to the show, the one and only Jill Stein. Jill, how are you?
Great. Good to be with you, Ron.
Good to see you. Happy New Year. And hope all's going well. So let's jump right into things because we have an awful lot to talk about today. And I know one of the things that you specifically really wanted to bring up was the FEC battle that you're still amidst of. So we can go ahead and start there. So I guess to begin, kind of give everyone a little bit of a refresher because this kind of goes back to 2016. So give everyone a refresher of what's been going on there.
Great. And to just put this in context, I want to just start by saying that we are facing existential crisis on steroids, a climate that is, in collapse right now and accelerating, crushing inequality, endless war that's about to go even much worse and, with nuclear risks and all that.
Did you see the list of topics I wrote out ahead of time? Did you see the list I prepared for you?
I think we are maybe we're on the same page here or we're thinking in the same brain. But, I think most people are there right now, because who's not experiencing this state of emergency that we're in, and war, climate, crushing.
And we all had the time to do our due diligence during the pandemic, so we've all had time to look into it. And if you're not mad and you're not scared, then then maybe you're just oblivious.
Inequality, and then this kind of chaos of public health, the COVID chaos that we're in right now, all of which reflect that we are in a full-fledged democracy meltdown and crisis. And to me, this it just drives home again why we need more than 2 political parties sponsored by the bankers and the billionaires and the big oil and war profiteers who benefit from this state of crisis. We got 2 parties that are funded by the profiteers, and they don't change course. And this is not just the last decade. This has been going on as long as I've been on the planet. And there was a big effort way back in the 60s and the 70s to reform the supposedly progressive party that is the Democrats. There was a thing called the realignment movement, which was going to bring together labor and the civil rights movement, which were giants back in that day, and they were going to reform the party. And of course, that floundered on the on the rocky shores of the Vietnam War, because both parties are creatures of the war industry and have been, as Dwight Eisenhower warned us way back then, at the end of the Second World War.
Was it an anti-war movement? I'm not super familiar with
it. Was not, and that was the thing. It divided over the war, and Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement, took a very principled stand against the war because they were the fodder for that war. It was above all people of color that were being sent to die in Vietnam, and lots of others as well. But it was, an especially outrageous burden for the communities of color. So they were ready to take a stand, and organized labor, for the most part, was not. And so the whole movement to, quote, reform the Democratic Party really fell apart. As long as it's been happening, and with each generation, there's a new illusion and a new sheepdog to kind of keep hope alive that things are going to change. But if you actually look at what's happened, we have only become more of an oligarchy. Money and power have concentrated more in the hands of fewer and fewer. It was certainly, it was evident in the Reagan administration. Now, he wasn't a Democrat, but this is a bipartisan problem.
Well, yeah, I
you can go back to Jimmy Carter, even for the war on unions. You were going to say?
Oh no, I was just going to say the way I like to frame it is I have only experienced in my entire lifetime Reagan or worse than Reagan as a president. That's all we've had.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you were around to see it, there was the Clinton outrages. In the 90s, and it's just been one assault after another. And, the system relies on people not knowing, and kind of organizing in the moment and being kind of oblivious to the actual track record here. And many of us, myself included, I'm oblivious to what took place before I was around, and there are loads of lessons there too, but to the extent you can glimpse them, they're pretty much the same, that progressives and everyday, and I don't mean just progressives, I mean populists, people who are not on the payroll or are not themselves, in the top 5 and 10%, and especially the top 1, are we are systematically thrown under the bus, and that's the way it works. And you're not supposed to know that that's the way it works. You're supposed to think the struggle is just in the moment, but that's really, and you can go back to the writing of the Constitution and see, what was really hardwired into our fledgling, so-called democracy. There were definitely some improvements that were being made there, but lots of preservation of the slave state and the oligarchy and kind of the makings of corporate capitalism. There was capitalism for sure, but it became much more corporate as time went on, and decisions that got made. It's been a mixed bag.
Oh, totally. People try to make it out like the Constitution is some omnipotent document, and it isn't. It was written by a particular group of people. The way I like to frame it is that they wrote the Declaration of Independence at a party, and then they wrote the Constitution the next day when they sobered up and realized they like all the power they have.
Yeah, exactly. And we struggle with all that, and it is it's a horrific legacy. But getting to sort of the subject here that we're starting off with, at any rate, is that in the words of Mahatma Gandhi, first they laugh at you, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And in 2016, we couldn't be ignored, and we couldn't, they couldn't laugh at us because we had a lot to say. And in fact, our agenda of 2016 has really been embraced, at least superficially, from the Green New Deal to Medicare for All to free public higher education.
Embraced in a very lightly way, like watered down, diluted. They've taken those ideas and ran with them because, yeah, on face, the ideas work. And the ideas worked with the Green Party. It's just they had to be diluted by corporate greed so that they could be palatable for any party. Because the number one thing in all of our parties, greed, greed, money, money, money.
The abolition of student debt, reparations for slavery.
Can I ask you a quick question about that really quick? Because this actually
Sure.
wasn't on my list, but I feel like it is very important. How does that make you feel on a personal level when you were bringing up ending student debt in 2016? And of course, there were a lot of people on board. I mean, I was one of them. But still, even on a larger scale, there were people laughing at the idea. I mean, John Oliver even did a segment on, we can't possibly do that. Now everybody realizes, or at least on a much more mass level, I would argue, everybody realizes that, yes, we can, to quote Barack Obama. We most certainly can eliminate student loan debt. Do you have a little bit of an I told you so thing going on? Because it's like you were one of the only people in the political realm, certainly the only presidential candidate by far, who was saying that.
I didn't get into this thinking that it was going to be, sweetness and light. I got into this, after decades of political struggle. I kind of went kicking and screaming into any political party whatsoever. I'd spent most of my life as an activist, fighting on the issues and in the trenches, and knew that the system was extremely corrupt. And if you dare to challenge it, get ready to be whacked, So I knew I would be whacked, and I wasn't expecting thank you notes here, or expecting anybody to blow kisses. I wasn't surprised at all by the resistance. In fact, in many ways, I'm honored that we got the resistance that we did, because it does fit right into Gandhi's paradigm, and it's a mark of success. If you get to where they start fighting back, you've really accomplished something, and you've really shaken the tree. And I'm really glad we've done that. I'm incredibly gratified that our agenda has been adopted. And
yeah, I mean, again, it's been watered down. When she said the agenda was adopted, like in word and face, not in the depth in the way that the Green Party had laid things out. They've watered everything down. The Democrats would never do anything like what the Green Party tried to do.
Expected to be thanked for any of that, and that agenda itself was the product of many people's work, and lots of Greens had helped evolve that. Sure. And Ralph Nader, of course, had launched Medicare for All as a national issue back in 2000. But all the other issues really were launched by us into the national dialogue, actually starting in 2012 in my first presidential campaign. And they were taken very seriously, and more seriously in 2016 because of the way things were falling apart within the Democratic Party and the Sanders insurgency. And, so that made us extremely threatening. Why? Because to have an option outside of the Democratic Party empowers progressive Democrats and forces the party to take them seriously, because then everyday people have somewhere else they can go. And I think that is why we have been so viciously, repressed and suppressed and vilified and ridiculed since 2016, because the Democratic Party is falling apart and because our economy is.
Yeah, no, people are starting to see through them. They're more easily, accessibly seen through than I guess the Republicans, maybe because the Republicans haven't changed as much. The Democrats have completely sold out in the last 40 years, and people are slow to see that kind of exposure. But we're going to keep trying to do it every day here. We are going to keep doing stony progressive takedowns of both incumbents of both parties, and they need to be shown through.
Because our climate is falling apart, because international, relations are falling apart, are in a very dangerous place. So in many ways, the days are numbered for empire. It is crashing and burning before our very eyes. And, it's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic how the empire continues to really humiliate itself right now. It has succeeded in dividing NATO and really creating a kind of bluff situation in Ukraine. We don't have to go into that a whole lot right now,
let's
but
not get too far ahead. Right. Yeah, so FCC first, and then
okay. So suffice it to say, the Greens and other progressives, we are a very inconvenient truth, and we really call out our democracy to behave like a democracy, and it's not. It's absolutely not. And the Democrats, for all their, virtue signaling around freedom to vote and their HR1, which was all about voting rights. Voting rights as long as you're a good, loyal
I don't know
Democratic
how you saw my question
constituency.
list ahead of time. I don't know. It's right here. I wrote it in pen. I don't know how. You must have X-ray vision or something.
I have insiders that sent me you.
Insiders. Oh, that is a Democratic burn, if ever. That is fantastic. That is that was the like the tone of the 2016 presidential election was insiders and leaking and letting the number one go.
Your agenda. All right, so we'll save that one for later too. But the point being, our message is not appreciated, our existence is not appreciated. But this is what authoritarian regimes do all the time. They suppress political opposition. So this happens in a lot of routine ways, like that if you are not part of the corporate political oligarchy, it's very hard to get on the ballot. And needless to say, the press wipes you out. You don't exist in the mainstream press, and you have to spend a huge amount of money to overcome obstructive ballot laws that require you to collect tens of thousands of signatures in many states, and at least thousands in just about all. I mean, there are one or two exceptions, maybe Vermont, but most states have this enormous ballot requirement. And if you're not being funded by bankers and billionaires and fossil fuel barons and the likes, and war profiteers, you don't have that money. So it's a very convenient way to suppress political opposition. So all of that is like totally routine. But what got different, I think, and reflects that our 2016 effort got a little bit too much momentum, for the comfort of the political authoritarians, is that they came after me big time in Russiagate and really tried to vilify me as a, what did Hillary Clinton say? I'm a Russian asset. They
literally came after her like because she had met Putin at a dinner and had shaken hands. She did nothing, and yeah, they came at him they came at her so hard, and she just ran a campaign for a 1.5–2% she got 1.5–2% of the vote, but they came at her so hard. They wanted to make third party being a scary thing. Like, if you run third party, we are going to attack you.
Asset, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Russian asset. Me and Tulsi Gabbard, and Bernie Sanders was implicated in his way too. But I thought that was really quite something to be noticed at that level.
That's a very diplomatic way to put it. That's quite something.
But what that meant was that I had to spend 3 years fighting the Senate Intelligence Committee, which launched a formal investigation not only of me, but also of the recount, which they deemed kind of the creation of Russian foreigners. They claimed had funded the recount, which is absolutely garbage. There was never any evidence to that effect. Never. And, it was just part of trying to link us into a scheme because I had given them, a launching pad by going to basically a peace conference, a media conference in Moscow in 2015, where I promoted our agenda and jumped at the chance to have a national voice with international media, everybody from the BBC to the...
Like somebody who's pursuing politics, it would be so basic to go to one of these and just try to make connections and meet people. Such a just a standard way of getting yourself out there and being more known. And that's what she did.
The Canadian broadcasting system to China and India and, and European and so on. I mean,
someone was seated at your table
for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or something, but there was no translator. I really wanted to give him my elevator speech about why we needed a global Green New Deal and why we needed to end nuclear weapons and a peace offensive in the Middle East, and why he was following in the disastrous U.S. footsteps by conducting a bombing campaign in Syria. So I was all for the peace offensive in the Middle East.
Sounds like she knows Russia is about the equivalent of America, not worse. Sounds like she understands that, because that's what, I mean, we need an enemy, but we're not better. We're not any better. We're bad too. Our military is good people, but not necessarily doing the best thing. I mean, bombing campaigns are not usually the best thing. Bombing an innocent country is not usually the best thing. Or innocent civilians is like 90% of who we hit with bombs. So those people do not appreciate it.
East, and I told that to everybody I had a chance to give my elevator speech to, and the main reason I went is because I had a place in the program. All of this was totally public. I raised public money in order to go there, making sure I did not accept a penny from, foreigners in order to do this. And it was all above board, all very public. And somehow
none of the
Democratic
cable networks could figure that out.
Yeah.
Somehow, like all the cable news networks with all their resources couldn't just follow the trail there. They couldn't figure that one out
somehow. Yeah, exactly. So they came after me for that. And I fought that for 3 years. And at the end of 3 years, they finally published in their 5th report that there was nothing. And they published details of my campaign, which I had spent the prior 3 years spoon feeding them all this information and all this evidence and data, spending a huge amount of money in order to hire the lawyers, in order to participate in this investigation. And at the end, they basically said, oops, nothing there. Thank you very much for having cooperated. And that was sort of the sum of what they concluded. But of course, that wasn't covered in the media. They just used this as an opportunity to smear me. And I felt obliged to really follow the details of Russiagate so that I could debunk the smears as they came one after another. Energy was spent doing, in addition to the recount, which actually did have very important successes, especially in the state of Pennsylvania, where we did succeed in pushing Pennsylvania to get rid of its paperless voting machines and really to raise the bar. There's a lot more work that needs to be done, but it was a very important step, and it had national implications. But aside from...
Yeah, she sued like 3 states, and one of those states, they told her that she didn't have the right to ask for a recount. I believe it was Michigan. And then they said that the Clinton campaign had the right to. Clinton campaign was there. They looked at them and they were just like, no, not going to do it. And so Clinton could have forced a count in Michigan and possibly winning the state, but she was not willing to bring election integrity to the forefront because both parties cheat in several ways, not just gerrymandering, but cross-check is the big one. And that is maybe something closer to election we should go over again, because cross-check is the way they get rid of all of these people's votes and just get away with it in so many states. And it's been since 2014, I think we've been doing it. And it's the biggest election fraud that there is.
That work, most of what I did for the next 3 years was debunk Russiagate and fight back so that the rumor mill couldn't take on a life of its own, which is how they go after you. They try to criminalize you by instigating myths and rumors and then creating so much public momentum that then they can get away with, locking you up. And, Julian Assange is sort of the classic case of that. And I was very aware of that. And I did not want to just let them get away with murder. And so that's what I did for 3 years. And then within about 2 weeks of the conclusion of that investigation, I got a letter from the FEC saying that I had to pay them $175,000 for public funding that was spent to get on the ballot, which is what the public funding was supposed to be for. And that's what we used it for in 2012. And we basically applied our experience of 2012 to 2016. So suffice it to say, I was totally blindsided by this.
Right.
As a candidate, one usually does not follow the details of your FEC, of your FEC dynamics. Candidates are, entirely unaware of that. So at that point, because we really no longer had a campaign, this is 5 years after the fact. 5 years later, I'm getting this bill, basically, this demand that I pay $175,000.
And the money was because you were on the ballot. That's like...
Well, we got money. You have to qualify for matching funds, and
Right.
you qualify by raising donations that are under $200, and you have to raise a certain amount in each state, and you submit that, and then you qualify for a certain amount of money. So we used a lot of that money. I mean, practically all of that money to get on the ballot, which is your main expense. If you are an independent candidate, you spend down most of your resources just trying to get past the barred gates to participate in the process and give Americans the choices that we're supposed to have in a democracy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the money went. And the FEC was basically applying some very obscure rules that I was entirely unaware of. But, it took me like a year. I dropped everything at that point. And I just said, okay, I'm going to figure out what's going on here because I don't have resources to hire an attorney now and figure this out. And I don't have a campaign apparatus to raise the money either. This is like 5 years after the campaign. Who's going to fund that, So I became,
she's not a candidate.
A research junkie on FEC compliance and exactly what happened when. And, we began to get the resources that, in little bits that we could hire a first lawyer. And then eventually we have a second attorney as well, Harry Kresge, who's been an attorney for political independence going way back and has been a wonderful resource. He was joined by Oliver Hall, who I also have to give big props to, with the Center for Competitive Democracy, because he's the go-to guy for political independence and third parties who want to have a competitive democracy, so that's what his group is about. And he has joined in a pro bono capacity, which has been just a total lifesaver. So this is what I've done for the last, going on 2 years now. All I do is fight this battle with the FEC pushback. We participated in a conciliation process, which had to be confidential, so I couldn't say anything about it publicly for the first year plus. And then when our conciliation succeeded in some ways, but basically failed on the big stuff, we are going to court and we are waiting for our case to be heard. We're about to file a big brief. So I've had to spend so much time digging into FEC rules and history and all the minutia of who sent what memo to whom, when, and how the money was spent, and all the details of it, which basically boils down to that there are obscure and contradictory rules that the FEC uses, which really tilt the playing field against grassroots players.
Mm-hmm.
And when the big players get into trouble with the FEC, and that often happens too, because the rules are so complicated, even they can't follow them with their teams of corporate lawyers, and they don't take public money anymore.
Right.
In large measure for that very reason. You know, everybody from John Andrews, you probably don't remember him, John Anderson, who was this independent back in like the 60s, who was a very progressive independent. I mean, a guy of just impeccable integrity. He got into, everybody's always getting into trouble with the FEC, some of it for good reason and a lot of it not for good reason. But the FEC is a bipartisan organization, and it basically is the first and last line of defense for the two corporate parties.
I was going to say, as soon as I hear bipartisan, I always think we're getting screwed. And I'll say that, like, I think I've said that for every single thing. Like, anytime you hear bipartisan, we are getting screwed. And like, I heard bipartisan and I'm like, uh-oh. And then, yep, boom, we're getting screwed. They won't give the federal money that they give to other candidates to non-R's or D's. Because the R's or D's, they have to run things. That's the way it's been set up for 60, 80 years now. They got it locked in. They kicked the women's league voters who used to control the all of the debates. They used to be the women of league voters, controlled all of that, like 1915, 1910, some crap. 50 years, and then bam, now it's Republicans, Democrats control who debates, and they basically can block anybody with an actual opinion from joining the debate.
And it provides the appearance of safeguarding the integrity of elections. But over the years, our elections have changed, and now most of the money is coming in. You know, it's dark money, it's unaccountable super PAC money, and a lot of it is also party money. The political parties can contribute huge amounts, and they also raise it.
Right.
Let me just make one last point, which is that us ordinary mortals follow the rules. Everyday people can contribute no more than, I think it's now up to $2,900 in an election cycle, which is extremely high. But if you are a big donor through the DNC or the RNC, you can contribute not $2,900, you can contribute $600,000 in a single check. So this is through like the Victory Fund. So there've been all kinds of legal schemes, or I should say legal end runs around reasonable campaign limits. There's just all kinds of devious dealings now that you need a whole team of corporate lawyers in order to do. And that's what the Democrats and Republicans do as a rule. And us little guys never do that.
Make it as hard as possible for anybody outside of the system to get into it. Exactly what we all want to hear, huh? Exactly what we were hoping to hear from this. I mean, not unexpected, but still disheartening.
You know, yet we are subject to all these incredible rules, and we get nitpicked all the time, and
it's just such a scam. Like it's just so all this stuff that you were mentioning, where they have all this corporate money, this dark money, this party money, that's all just fine. But you know, actual grassroots efforts to try to compete with this, that's nitpicked. Where 5 years after an election, hey, you got $175,000 bill you need to take care of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like this. You could not write this as a dystopian novel. Like you couldn't do it. It's just too absurd at this point.
And this is, you know, I'm fighting this for a lot of reasons. You know, it's like, it's a pretty ruinous thing to have a $175,000 bill thrown at you. You know, like, I'm a doctor, so I won't lose my house, but most grassroots candidates would. So what does this do to the future of grassroots politics. It's like the crucifixion in the square. It says, you dare to challenge us? Well, get ready for what's going to happen to you. And it's an assault, really, I think, on public financing and independent politics and ballot access, which really depends on having the public money in order to make it over these hurdles. So to my mind, this is like textbook political repression. It is just hardwired into the rules of the game. They don't have to drag it out just for you. It's like the way the rules are written, they're so complicated and they're so obscure that you're going to get skewered on them. And if you don't have a big fundraising machine that's ready to go for you, which is what the big candidates do, if they get caught on the FEC rules, they just raise it, easily through their big money machines and their big donors. So, we're fighting this. And if people want to help fight for the future of independent politics, go to jillstein.net and you'll find the story is there. And, you can help push back against this political repression against independent politics, which is more important than ever. And if you want to segue here, Ron, you can do that, because to my mind, that's the real rub, is that it's not just that independent candidates are getting big fines, it's that our future is going up in flames before our very eyes right now. And the fight against that is being silenced because independent politics is being shut down.
Right. So based on everything we've talked about so far, which there is a lot of ground, and it is very discouraging from the perspective of, we want an alternative to the duopoly, to the, I like to call them Wall Street approved Team D and Wall Street approved Team R. What are some steps that can be taken, and not just by the Greens, but
kind of what I say here. I mean, that's close. It's not exact, but we definitely have the same idea about the R's and D's. They're just corporate owned, man. It's like 85-90% same sponsors every time. Every single time I look it up. And I'm going to keep looking it up just for the sake of, having the clips you can send to somebody that maybe lives in that district. So you can actually say, hey, that person's owned by Facebook. Hey, that person's owned by Google. Hey, that person's owned by Halliburton. They took a lot of money, and it's never the money on paper that you need to worry about. They're taking that money because the money off paper is so good.
By any third-party movement to make third parties more viable.
Join one, join one. And, if you have concerns about what it means in certain votes, you could still vote however you want. But it's really important to build the movement for independent politics, because corporate politics is only becoming more and more corporate, and in fact, if you look at where the big money is coming from, it's mostly coming from Democrats now. It's not only small donors, it's big donors. And by the way, small donors are not saving the day. There's a lot of lip service given to small donors. And of course they are, critically important. We should have a publicly funded system of elections. We should not be dependent on money and big money and sources of money. There should be an even playing field. And, there are legitimate ways to require candidates to qualify, but you shouldn't qualify based on, how fat your Rolodex is with lobbyists and corporate contributors.
Yeah.
So it is the Democrats right now who are leading in the money game. Small donors accounted for 22% in 2020. 22%. Okay, that means 78% was the big donors. And those big donors are donating in bigger quantities than ever.
Well, and when you give that number, does that mean like completely total out of the entire primary and everything? Like, is that where that number
it's throughout the election cycle? Yes, those numbers are from Open Secrets.
So chances are, I guess the reason I asked that is chances are the only reason it is even that high is because of Bernie Sanders. That would be my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think. And that was up from 2016, where it was more like 16%, I want to say, as opposed to 22%. So it did increase. That's good. But the big donors are donating in huge quantities, and that's growing much faster than the small donors are growing. And in fact, the total amount of money flooding our political process doubled between 2016 and 2020. So it's on the rise. It is accelerating, and the corruption goes with it. As John McCain himself used to say, where there's a lot of money sloshing around, there is going to be a lot of corruption that goes with it. I'm paraphrasing.
Well, he said it with jubilance, though. He was happy about it. He was stoked. He's just like, there's a lot of corruption, and I can't. I'm getting my taste.
Yes, exactly. But he was actually among his colleagues. He was one of the more principled. Not that he didn't wallow in a lot of it himself, but yeah, it's the numbers are going up. The parties are more and more corrupt, and look who's now the head of the DNC. Jamie Harrison, I think his name is, who was their failed candidate from South Carolina for Senate, who broke records in his fundraising and still lost because, the Democrats are such hypocrites that they can throw all this corporate money into their races and compromise their agenda all the more for being awash in that corporate money. And they still can't win, and the Abigail Spanbergers who say, never mention the word socialism again, who barely won her race, who is an example, as Jamie Harrison is, of the kinds of candidates. Harrison is was a corporate lobbyist for fossil fuel and tobacco and the usual suspects. That's who's now heading the DNC. The DNC, which, by the way, will not recognize the grassroots Democratic parties that are trying to reform their state.
No, they block any outside movement of the Democratic Party at all. And that's what the Democrats do. They're a big establishment with big money. And that was just another proof. If you raise a ton of money, you don't even have to win. If you raise a ton of money, they will put you in a spot that you can abstract well for yourself. And that's how it's all ran. It's just a big game, and the R's and D's all play it.
Parties. So Nevada had a Democratic election and was taken over by their grassroots progressives. And the DNC did an end run around them. They won't recognize them. They won't share their, they have found ways to deprive them of their money and their database. So, the Democrats who believe so, heartfully in voting rights, they won't even respect the votes in their own state parties, and they take them over. Instead, they created a PAC to serve as the state party, so that's the paradigm,
So and that's just one example of when they have shown their entire ass. I think another example in Buffalo, where they hijacked the mayor. They just, whenever they try to throw that blue no matter who thing at their voters, they can never do that again. They never could have in the first, but you know what I mean. Now it is just so blatant, where it's how can you guys say that when you just screwed over a mayoral candidate in Buffalo, so blatantly, where that guy
so
did
blatantly
the write-in thing. It's just so. I want to get a little bit into the Green Party specifically too, because first of all, I think we gotta inject a little bit of positivity here, and y'all have seen some victories recently.
Okay. I don't party affiliation. We can just move on because green candidates, independents, you still got to do your due diligence. You still got to look them up and check on them. And I will not say that just because they're from the Green Party means they're acceptable candidates. You can find banned candidates in any party. That's freaking, career climbers can come from anywhere.
In the past election cycle, that there were some decent local victories throughout the country by Greens. Are there any that, first of all, are there any you want to highlight? And also, are there any larger kind of initiatives the Green Party is working on? I know that you all have done a lot for ranked choice voting, which I appreciate a lot, but are there some other things you would like to kind of emphasize and highlight as well?
First, I want to just underscore what you just said about ranked choice voting, which also answers your first question about what can we do to open up the democratic process. You know, insist on ranked choice voting, really push it. I mean, it's outrageous that ranked choice voting is not a part of the Democrats' voting rights agenda. You know, we should have a right to vote, but not a right to choose who we vote for. You know, I mean, that's classic political machine language. And anybody who has a shred of a belief that the Democratic Party is reformable or can be rehabilitated, you should be pushing for ranked choice voting, which, by the way, hugely expands the power of progressives and populists within the Democratic Party, because the minute progressives have somewhere else to go and you're not intimidated by fears about the spoiler effect, vote splitting, whatever you want to call it, the minute that obsession goes away, then progressives become very powerful within the Democratic Party. But without that, you are absolutely powerless, you know, and forget it for the future of progressives within the Democratic Party. So if you even want to save the Democratic Party, put ranked choice voting, you know, insist that ranked choice voting become a part of the agenda, and, you know, force the vote that's going to be a principal, open and small d Democratic vote. So that would be critical in terms of like looking at where the Greens are right now in this fight. I really want to send people right now to a website and a campaign that I am extremely excited about. Maybe one of the most important campaigns I think the Greens have ever run. And this is the campaign of Matthew Hoh, that's spelled H-O-H, who's running for Senate in North Carolina. He's running for an open seat. There are 5 candidates, including Libertarian and an independent, as well as a Green. Matthew Hoh, the name may ring a bell because he is the one former State Department official who actually had a post in Afghanistan in, I think it was 2010, when Obama was doing his surge. And Matt Hoh was a 3 tour of duty Marine who had risen up to the rank, I think, of captain and then to a State Department appointment. And so he had a glorious future if he could just kind of keep his mouth shut about what he was seeing in Afghanistan and his 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan and Iraq. This is no shrinking violet. This is not someone who, you know, talks the talk without walking the walk. This is someone who just routinely put his life on the line for his, you know, attachment to his community and his country, and did it in a very honorable way, and didn't like what he saw. And when he saw that Obama was surging the troops, he wrote a letter resigning. He made a very public resignation, and at that point became an ardent anti-war activist, member of Veterans for Peace and many other very principled foreign policy groups, where he now holds some, you know, position in one of these progressive watchdog groups. And I had heard about him at the time that he quit, and I thought, wow, who's doing that, you know? And then hadn't heard anything of him for quite some time. And then at the time that the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan recently, he and another awesome vet, Danny Shurjan, I think, Shurjan, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but the two of them were featured. And Matthew was featured on Democracy Now!, on Aaron Mate, on Matt Taibbi and Katie Helper. He's a really eloquent spokesperson. He is, you know, a true veteran who lives the struggle of veterans and does a lot now to help veterans survive with what he describes as blood on our hands, you know, that won't wash off. And, you know, I just find his words are so compelling because that blood is on all of our hands. And we all have to stop the bleeding, you know, and that bleeding is only accelerating over the years as we, you know, conduct, I think it's 85 operations now, so-called anti-terror operations around the world, 800 bases. You know, we're talking about Russia, you know, daring to defend its borders. Well, what did we do when Russia had missiles in Cuba? We went ballistic and we were ready to go to nuclear war because Russia was in Cuba. What would we be doing if Russia had its troops and its weapons encroaching on our border in Mexico? We would go ballistic. So this is that in reverse. Anyhow,
Wow.
Matthew speaks to all of this. He, you know, he has lived this. He has bled for it. He knows what he's talking about. A person of courage like that really needs to be in the Senate. And I really urge people to go to his website, which is Matthew Ho, and that's 2 T's in the Matthew Ho for Senate.org. And I urge you to get involved early and often. And let's make.
And yeah, I just wanted her rant on Russia and Ukraine was a great way to end this. And I wanted to let her plug her candidate too. We are hopping on the stream. We got to let them plug who they're plugging. And she's excited about that candidate. So if you know her, check out. But so yeah, that Jill Stein has a pretty great interview there with Ron Placaone on Get Your News On with Ron. Get your news on with Ron, guys. And he does a good job. And like I said, he is a fantastic person for MMT and for net neutrality, communal high-speed internet. He's looking community broadband stuff. So he is worth checking out. Let us know. All right, we lost people again. So I'm going to go back to TYT. Oh, what just happened? That didn't go the way I wanted it to. Okay, so this will be the first TYT segment I have watched in quite a while. This is going to be about, where are we at? Yeah, it's going to be about halftime of our show tonight. So anybody checking in on the second half, we're starting out with TYT. We're going to be hitting a lot of segments, a lot of good stuff today, second half of the show. And let's blaze one and check out, get mad at this TYT clip most likely. I'm just assuming. I haven't watched it. I'm trying not to watch this twice, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have it too. But he didn't go to the doctor and just kind of taking care.
Seems to throttle me usually, so give it a second. Wow. This doesn't want to play for me? Okay, I mean, okay, well, I'm getting back off a little bit. Oh my God. Always with some shit. Dude, we're going the other way. Come on. Jeez. Oh, okay, we get 30 seconds into it.
Coughing. His lungs are so bad.
I don't know, my lungs got bad for a while. I just stayed home and went to sleep.
Yeah, that's what he was doing, but he wasn't getting any better.
Oh, really? Wow, I'm sorry to hear that.
Okay, so there's a lot happening in that video.
Oh, I did not know it was going to be her. Okay. I just clicked on a TYT video. I didn't look to see who it was. And it's, yeah, the bitchuation moments. I thought it'd be one of the two idiots. It's one of the minions. I used to like her, but she is, with the rest of TYT, moved corporate left instead of being a leftist. Being corporate left is much different.
For those of you who didn't catch it, and thanks to JR for throwing subs on that, there was a discussion about a friend of hers named Danny with another fellow protester. They said, yep, Danny's got COVID. He's in the hospital. And then there's a little bit of a why? Why is he in the hospital? Well, he's got COVID. It's a little bit of a who's on first conversation happening, you know, because he's got COVID and we're all anti-vax.
He's in the hospital because he's got COVID, and I guess he was sick enough to feel like he had to be in the hospital. I mean, just about everybody else on the planet, if you're just a little sick, you don't go to the hospital. So if he's in the hospital, I would assume that he thought he needed to be there. I don't, what's happening right now?
Then his friend is suggesting ivermectin. He's suggesting taking zinc. But Cenk, did you catch the beginning when she says, yeah, Danny's got COVID. He's dying. I have COVID too. Anyway, what's for lunch? Doopy-doopy-doo. Just.
Yeah. No.
What is going on?
No, Franny, I went back and double checked the article.
I was really hoping it was just her for a moment. I guess she bounces around between Sam Cedar and Cenk for being the pretty thing on camera. And I mean, I don't know, maybe just my memory of her was twisted 6 years ago when I watched TYT, because if you listen to somebody enough, you'll hear a few things that you would agree with. But then there's other times that you're like, you know what? You're fake. You're Oh, that was fantastic. Please tell me it's clean again. All good. Looks like we're good again. Let me check the stream here. That is fantastic. Oh, I can't. It's too much. It's too much. That is what happened. All right. I can't do TYT. If anybody was watching, you saw it happen. I can't do TYT. Basically throttled me. So I will not have that up again ever. Thank you. We will find another way to take them down sometime. But not straight like that. Oh, I gotta do something else. Okay, that was funny. So yeah, no TYT, guys. So let's go through strikes from the week, since that is a taboo subject, I guess. Oh, that throttled me so fast. That was great. All right, I wanted to hit the strikes and walkouts, protests for the week. There's more than just one going on, and that was my main point for this. So Strike Sunday, there's always strikes on the weekend, protests on the weekend, and there's not just one happening right now. There's never just one happening. So this is the first one from Friday.
Welcome everyone to the Real News Network. My name is Maximilian Alvarez, and I'm the editor-in-chief here at the Real News. Earlier this week, we recorded an interview with Israel Cervantes, a labor organizer who worked for 13 years at the General Motors plant in Silao, Mexico, about a pivotal struggle taking place at the Silao plant in the state of Guanajuato. At the center of this story is a historic union election that has been years in the making. After first ridding themselves of a corrupt, business-friendly union last year, the 6,500 workers at the massive GM plant voted this week on which union would represent them moving forward. On Thursday, February 3rd, news broke that workers overwhelmingly voted to join the Independent National Auto Workers Union, or the Sindicato Independiente Nacional de Trabajadores y Trabajadoras de la Industria Automotriz. With nearly 90% voter turnout, Reuters reported on Thursday that 4,192 votes out of 5,389 were cast by workers wanting to affiliate with Cynthia, securing a major victory for rank and filers who have been fighting for a more independent and more democratic union. Now, the interview you're about to watch was recorded before the vote took place in the first days of February.
Wasn't trying to actually do the whole interview, guys, just as a segment, giving the overview of what was going on down there. Also want to do status quo check-in. So Amazon and Starbucks.
Movement here in the labor movement. There's serious movement going on in the labor movement. Let's start with Starbucks in the lead up to them winning the first unionized Starbucks.
Hey. Let me do this either. It can be a lot of things. That was an update on the unions. This thing is just taking down
We are
right
tracking
now.
breaking news in Lacey, where students just walked out of. Well, we are tracking breaking news in Lacey, where students just walked out of class in protest after a racist incident at a basketball game. Fox 13's Brian Flores is there for us. Brian, what can you tell us?
Yeah, good morning, Liz. Yeah, we're here at River Ridge High School. We're behind me. They've been doing this ever since Monday because of the racist.
Well, we are tracking breaking news.
Well, looks like it's letting me do this right now. Yeah, all right. So I guess I did something wrong again, and YouTube is not letting me stream tonight. So I guess I'm done. Sorry, guys.